Right now, sitting in your home, you have items that could literally save your life when everything collapses. I'm not talking about expensive gear or fancy gadgets. I'm talking about 11 dirt cheap things, some you probably threw away this week, that will become more valuable than gold when the shelves go empty and the lights go out for good. And before you think this is just another prepper fantasy, let me tell you something that will chill you to the bone. In every major collapse in modern history, from the Soviet Union to Venezuela to Argentina, it wasn't the people with the most money who survived. It was the people who recognized the hidden value in everyday objects before everyone else figured it out. Here's what most people don't realize. When supply chains snap and stores close permanently, it's not the high-tech equipment that saves you. It's the mundane household items everyone overlooks. While your neighbors are fighting over the last generator at Home Depot for $3,000, you'll quietly have everything you need already sitting in your kitchen drawers and closets, items that cost you less than $20 total. The data is staggering, and it should terrify you. FEMA reports show that 60% of American families couldn't survive 72 hours without outside help. That's 3 days, 72 hours. But here's the kicker. The families who make it through extended crises aren't the ones with the most money. They're not the ones with underground bunkers or military-grade equipment. They're the ones who recognize the hidden value in everyday objects before it was too late. I've spent the last 3 years studying real collapse scenarios, talking to people who lived through them, analyzing what actually worked when everything fell apart. And what I discovered will change how you look at every single item in your house. Look, I've been studying collapse scenarios for years, and every expert I've talked to, from former military logistics officers to families who survived the Bosnian War, they all agree on one terrifying fact. The next crisis won't announce itself with sirens or breaking news alerts. It'll start quietly, almost invisibly. Maybe it begins with a cyber attack on the power grid that takes down 3 major cities. Maybe it's a cascading supply chain failure that starts with a single port closure and spreads like wildfire. Maybe it's a financial system collapse that happens overnight while you're sleeping. One day you'll wake up and nothing will work. No electricity, no internet, no deliveries, no stores opening, no gas stations pumping fuel, no pharmacies filling prescriptions, no banks processing transactions. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. Most people are preparing for the wrong thing entirely. They're stockpiling freeze-dried meals that cost $40 per day per person and buying solar panels they don't know how to install. They're focused on the big-ticket items, the impressive gear, the stuff that makes them feel prepared. But they're completely ignoring the basic items that will actually determine whether they survive the first week or become just another casualty. Let me give you a reality check that most preppers don't want to hear. In Venezuela's economic collapse, and this is happening right now, not some distant historical event, people weren't trading gold coins or silver bars. They weren't bartering with ammunition or high-tech equipment. They were fighting over soap, over candles, over empty plastic containers. A bar of soap could buy you a meal. An empty glass jar could get you medicine for your sick child. In Puerto Rico, after Hurricane Maria knocked out power for 11 months, 11 months, the most valuable items weren't generators or solar chargers. Those broke down or ran out of fuel within weeks. The items that kept families alive were things like rope, plastic sheeting, basic hand tools, and containers for collecting rainwater. The simple, unsexy stuff that nobody thinks about until they desperately need it. Here's what happened in Bosnia during the war that most people don't know. The families who survived weren't the ones with the most weapons or the biggest stockpiles of military rations. They were the families who understood that in a collapsed world, the complex becomes useless and the simple becomes priceless. That smartphone you're watching this on right now, in a real collapse, it's deadweight, a useless chunk of metal and plastic. But that old towel you were about to throw away, that could be the difference between treating an infection and watching someone die from it. The uncomfortable truth that no one wants to face is this. When civilization breaks down, when the trucks stop running and the stores close forever, survival comes down to the most basic human needs: clean water, food preservation, fire, shelter, sanitation, medical care. And every single one of those needs can be met with items you probably have in your house right now, if you know what to look for. So, let me show you these 11 items, starting with something so obvious it's become invisible to most people.
Item number 1, empty glass jars. Every single week, you throw away pasta sauce jars, pickle jars, jam containers, baby food jars. Stop. Right now, I want you to stop doing that. Because when the supply chain breaks, and it will break, these jars become survival currency more valuable than cash. Think about this for a moment. When stores are empty and new containers are impossible to find, how exactly are you going to store clean water? How will you preserve the food you manage to find or grow? How will you keep medicine organized and protected from moisture, heat, and contamination? How will you portion out precious resources like salt, spices, or seeds? Let me tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. During Yugoslavia's collapse in the 1990s, a modern, educated European nation that fell apart in just a few years, empty glass jars were literally used as currency. I interviewed a man named Marco who lived through the siege of Sarajevo, and he told me that people would walk miles to trade empty glass jars for bread, for fuel, for medicine. Not gold, not silver, glass jars. Why? Because glass has properties that make it irreplaceable in survival situations. First, it doesn't degrade. Unlike plastic containers that crack from temperature changes and leak chemicals into your food and water, glass jars can be reused thousands of times without losing their integrity. Second, they create airtight seals that prevent contamination and preserve freshness. Third, they're transparent, so you can see exactly what's inside without opening them and exposing contents to air and bacteria. But here's where most people get this wrong. They think any jar will do. That's amateur thinking. The smart preppers I know, and I've learned from people who survived everything from economic collapse to natural disasters to civil wars, they save jars strategically. Different sizes for different purposes, and they test every single seal to make sure it's perfect. Small 4-ounce jars are perfect for medicine and spices, things where a little goes a long way and contamination could be deadly. Medium 8 to 16-ounce jars are ideal for seeds, small hardware like nails and screws, and precious items like matches or batteries. Large 32-ounce jars become water storage containers and food preservation vessels. And here's a technique that could save your life. These jars can become water purification devices. Fill a jar with layers of sand, charcoal, and cloth, and you've created a filtration system that can remove particles and some bacteria from questionable water sources. It's not perfect, but when you have no other options, it could mean the difference between staying hydrated and dying of thirst. The key is to start collecting these now while they're free. Clean them thoroughly, test the seals, and store them somewhere safe. Because when the crisis hits, you won't be able to order mason jars on Amazon. The factories will be shut down, the supply chains will be broken, and the stores will be empty.
Item number 2, old cotton t-shirts and fabric scraps. That pile of old t-shirts you've been meaning to donate, that stack of worn-out sheets and towels taking up space in your closet, those could save your family's life. And I'm not being dramatic. Most people think of old fabric as trash, but in a collapse scenario, clean cotton becomes medical gold when pharmacies are empty and hospitals are overwhelmed. Let me explain why cotton specifically is so crucial, because this isn't common knowledge. Cotton has natural antibacterial properties that synthetic fabrics don't have. When you need to dress a wound and you have no sterile bandages, clean cotton can be sterilized by boiling and used as wound dressings. It absorbs blood and fluid without sticking to wounds the way synthetic materials do. It breathes, which prevents the anaerobic conditions that lead to dangerous infections. But medical applications are just the beginning. Cotton fabric can filter water, not to drinking purity, but enough to remove large particles, debris, and some bacteria from questionable water sources. When layered properly, cotton can create surprisingly effective pre-filters for more advanced purification systems. Torn into strips, cotton becomes rope and cordage. I've seen people braid cotton strips into rope strong enough to secure shelters, hang food out of reach of animals, or even fashion emergency tourniquets. The natural fibers grip against each other in ways that synthetic materials simply can't match. Here's something that will shock you. Cotton fabric burns slowly and steadily, making it perfect for starting fires when matches and lighters run out. Petroleum-based synthetic fabrics melt and drip dangerous molten plastic, but cotton creates a reliable, controllable flame that can ignite kindling even in wet conditions. Charcloth, cotton fabric that's been partially burned in an oxygen-free environment, can catch sparks from flint and steel and hold an ember for minutes. I want to share a story that really drives this home. During the Bosnian War, a nurse named Amala told me that people would literally trade ammunition for clean cloth because treating infections was more important than having an extra bullet. Medical supplies ran out in the first weeks of the siege, but families who had stockpiled cotton fabric could keep wounds clean and prevent fatal infections for months. But there's a technique for preparing fabric that most people don't know about. Don't just throw old shirts in a box and forget about them. Cut them into useful sizes. Strips for bandages, squares for wound dressings, larger pieces for filtering. Wash them thoroughly, then boil them to kill any bacteria. Once they're completely dry, store them in airtight containers to keep them sterile. Different weights of cotton fabric have different uses. Heavy cotton, like denim, becomes insulation and protection from thorns and sharp objects. Medium weight cotton, like t-shirts, becomes bandages and filters. Light cotton, like sheets, becomes fine filters and fire-starting material. And here's an advanced application. Cotton fabric soaked in certain natural substances becomes a primitive but effective antiseptic. During World War II, battlefield medics would soak cotton bandages in honey, which has natural antibacterial properties, when they ran out of proper antiseptics. It's not ideal, but when you have no other options, these traditional methods can keep people alive. Now, I need to pause here and share something critical with you. As I've been researching collapse scenarios and talking to survival experts, people who've actually lived through societal breakdown, I discovered something that fundamentally changed my perspective on what's coming and how to prepare for it. I recently came across a presentation by Daniel Cross, a former Pentagon officer who spent years working inside the system before walking away to live completely off-grid. This isn't your typical doomsday theorist posting videos from his basement. This is a guy who had security clearance, who saw classified reports about infrastructure vulnerabilities, who worked on military continuity planning for worst-case scenarios. What Cross reveals is absolutely terrifying, and it explains why I'm so urgent about sharing these household items with you today. According to his inside knowledge, the next collapse won't come with explosions or obvious attacks. It won't be missiles or tanks or anything you can see coming. It'll come with silence. Everything will just stop working. Power grids, financial systems, supply chains, communication networks, all at once in a coordinated shutdown designed to look like random system failures. Most people won't even realize it's a coordinated attack until it's too late to respond. They'll think it's just a temporary outage, just a supply chain hiccup, just a banking glitch that will be fixed in a few days. But Cross explains how this quiet war is designed to collapse modern civilization without firing a single shot by simply turning off the complex systems we depend on for everything. He spent years after leaving the Pentagon living with off-grid communities, Amish farmers, survivalist families in Appalachia, even indigenous communities in remote areas, learning how people actually survive when modern infrastructure disappears. He tested everything personally. He didn't just read about survival techniques in books, he lived them for years. The result is a comprehensive guide he calls Dark Reset, Survival Before the Silence, and it goes way beyond what I can cover in this video. It includes detailed field-tested strategies for everything I'm showing you today, plus advanced techniques like preserving food without refrigeration for months at a time, sourcing and purifying water in urban environments, protecting your home when law enforcement disappears, and training your family mentally and emotionally to stay calm when others are panicking. What makes this different from other survival guides is that Cross's techniques aren't theoretical. These are methods he learned from people who survived real collapses, economic warfare, civil wars, natural disasters that lasted for years. He lived with Venezuelan families who made it through their economic collapse. He studied with Eastern European communities that survived the fall of the Soviet Union. He learned from people who lived through Hurricane Katrina, the 2008 financial crisis, the Texas winter storm crisis. Right now, he's making the complete system available for just $37, which is honestly less than most people spend on lunch, because he believes we're running out of time to prepare. The techniques and strategies in his guide have already helped thousands of families create comprehensive preparedness systems using mostly everyday items they already own. Look, I don't promote things I don't believe in. I've seen what's in this guide, and I honestly think it could be the difference between your family surviving or becoming another statistic when this quiet war begins in earnest. The link is in the description if you want to check it out after this video, but let me continue showing you these critical household items first, because even if you never get the guide, this information could save your life.
Item number 3. Aluminum foil. You probably have a roll in your kitchen right now, maybe even 2 or 3 rolls if you buy in bulk. When the grid goes down and normal cooking methods disappear, that roll of aluminum foil becomes a multi-tool more versatile than any Swiss Army knife you could buy. Most people think of aluminum foil as something you wrap leftovers in, but in survival situations, its properties make it invaluable. Aluminum reflects heat and light, which means you can use it to create solar cookers that can cook food using nothing but sunlight. I've seen people cook entire meals by wrapping food in foil and placing it in reflective boxes made from cardboard and more foil. But it also reflects your body heat back to you, which can prevent hypothermia in cold conditions. Emergency blankets are just aluminum foil with a backing material, and you can create the same life-saving effect by wrapping yourself in regular foil when you're at risk of freezing. Crumple aluminum foil up, and it becomes an abrasive scrubber that can clean pots and pans without soap or detergent. The crumpled metal creates thousands of tiny edges that scrape away food residue and grease. When soap is unavailable or too precious to waste, this becomes your primary cleaning method. Here's a use that could save your electronics. Wrap them in aluminum foil and you create a Faraday cage that protects against electromagnetic pulses. Whether from solar flares, nuclear detonations, or directed EMP weapons, these pulses can fry every electronic device for hundreds of miles. But electronics wrapped in aluminum foil are protected. Your radio, your flashlight, your basic electronics could still work when everyone else's are permanently destroyed. Military survival manuals actually list aluminum foil as one of the most versatile survival tools because it's lightweight, waterproof, and has applications most people never consider. You can fashion it into funnels for collecting rainwater. You can use it to create reflective signals that can be seen from miles. You can wrap it around sticks to make makeshift antennas that boost radio reception. But here's an advanced technique that most people don't know. Aluminum foil can help you preserve food without refrigeration. Wrap foods tightly in foil and bury them in cool ground, and the aluminum creates a barrier against bacteria and pests, while the earth provides natural cooling. It's not perfect refrigeration, but it can extend the life of perishable foods for days or even weeks in the right conditions. The key is buying the heavy-duty foil, not the cheap, thin stuff that tears easily. Heavy-duty aluminum foil can be reused multiple times and handles rough treatment. Store it carefully to prevent tearing, because once the supply chain breaks, you won't be able to replace it.
Item number 4. Candles and matches, the foundation of fire control. Here's something that sounds obvious, but most people get completely wrong. It's not about having light when the power goes out. Any idiot can buy a flashlight. This is about having controlled fire on demand when all the complex systems that make fire easy, gas stoves, electric heaters, automatic pilot lights, stop working forever. When you can't flip a switch or turn a knob, your ability to create and control fire becomes the absolute foundation of survival. Fire means you can boil water to make it safe to drink. Fire means you can cook food to kill bacteria and parasites. Fire means you can stay warm in cold weather. Fire means you can sterilize medical instruments. Fire means you can signal for help over long distances. But regular candles aren't enough, and here's where most people make critical mistakes. You don't want decorative candles with fragrances and additives. You want the longest burning, most efficient candles you can find. The thick pillar candles designed for emergency use. The religious candles that burn for days. The utility candles made from pure paraffin or beeswax.
These emergency candles can burn for 40 to 50 hours each, giving you nearly a week of controlled flame from a single candle. And when they're finally spent, the wax can be melted down and reformed with new wicks made from cotton string or fabric strips. You can literally recycle the same wax dozens of times. But here's the critical part most people miss. You need reliable ignition sources, and that's more complex than just buying matches. Regular strike anywhere matches are great, but they can get wet and moisture destroys them completely. Waterproof matches are better, but they're expensive and you can't carry as many. The smart approach is regular matches stored in completely waterproof containers. Not just water-resistant, but absolutely waterproof. Glass jars with tight seals, metal containers with rubber gaskets, anything that guarantees no moisture can get in. Store multiple containers in different locations so you always have backup ignition sources. And always have multiple backup methods for creating fire. A butane lighter is convenient, but can break or run out of fuel. A flint and steel system works in any conditions, but requires practice. A magnifying glass can start fires using sunlight, but only works during the day. The key is redundancy. Multiple methods so you're never dependent on a single system. Let me share a story that shows how critical this is. During the Texas winter storm in 2021, when the power grid failed and people were trapped in their homes without heat, families were literally burning furniture, books, even clothing to stay warm. But they were doing it dangerously, starting fires in fireplaces that hadn't been maintained, using inappropriate containers, creating carbon monoxide hazards. The families who made it through comfortably were the ones who had proper fire-starting materials and knew how to use them safely. They had candles for controlled, long-lasting flames. They had matches stored properly. They understood fire safety and ventilation. They turned a life-threatening situation into a manageable inconvenience. Here's an advanced technique. Learn to make your own candles from available materials. Animal fat, bacon grease, even butter can be used to make emergency candles using cotton wicks. It's not pretty, but when you run out of store-bought candles, these traditional methods can keep you supplied with controlled fire indefinitely.
Item number 5. Plastic bags and storage containers. Every time you go grocery shopping, you come home with plastic bags. Every time you order takeout, you get plastic containers. Most people stuff them in a drawer under the sink and forget about them until they're throwing them away. But in a collapse scenario, these become organizational lifelines that can mean the difference between chaos and control. Let me explain why plastic bags and containers are so crucial, because this goes far beyond just storage. In a world where everything is breaking down, organization becomes survival. When you can't run to the store to replace something you've lost, when every item becomes precious and irreplaceable, being able to find what you need quickly can be a matter of life and death. Plastic bags are waterproof storage that protects everything inside from moisture, which is the enemy of almost everything you want to preserve. Documents become unreadable when they get wet. Medicine breaks down and becomes ineffective. Food spoils faster when exposed to humidity. Electronics fail when moisture gets inside. But plastic bags can be repurposed in dozens of ways beyond storage. Cut them into strips and braid them into surprisingly strong rope. Use them to collect rainwater by creating funnels and collection systems. In medical emergencies, they can serve as makeshift gloves to prevent contamination, or even as emergency foot coverings when shoes are damaged. Ziploc bags are the real treasure here, because they create airtight seals that don't just keep water out, they keep air out, which prevents oxidation and spoilage. You can use them to portion out medicine into exact doses, which prevents waste and helps you track how much you have left. You can store seeds for planting in individual packets with planting instructions written on the outside. You can keep fire-starting materials dry even in wet conditions. Here's a technique most people never consider. Clear plastic bags can create miniature greenhouse effects. Put them over small plants or seedlings, and they trap moisture and heat, extending your growing season even in cold weather. You can start seeds indoors and protect young plants from frost, dramatically increasing your food production capability. But there's an advanced application that could save your life. Plastic bags can be used for water procurement in survival situations. Tie a clear plastic bag around a branch of a leafy tree, and the tree's natural transpiration will collect water inside the bag. It's not a huge amount, but in desperate situations, it can provide enough drinking water to keep you alive. Different types of plastic containers have different survival applications. Clear containers let you see what's inside without opening them, which prevents contamination and saves time. Opaque containers protect contents from light, which can degrade medicine and some foods. Flexible containers can be squeezed to remove air, which extends storage life. The key is collecting these containers systematically. Don't just grab random bags and containers. Think about sizes and shapes that serve specific purposes. Small containers for pills and tiny hardware. Medium containers for tools and supplies. Large containers for bulk storage and water collection.
Item number 6, duct tape, the universal problem solver. If you don't have at least 3 rolls of duct tape in your house right now, stop watching this video and go buy some. Seriously, I mean it. Nothing repairs more things in more situations than duct tape. And in a collapse scenario where you can't replace broken items, your ability to repair and maintain equipment becomes absolutely critical to survival. Duct tape is waterproof, incredibly strong, and sticks to almost everything. It can seal broken windows to keep out cold and moisture. It can repair torn tarps and tents to maintain shelter. It can create emergency bandages and medical wraps when proper supplies aren't available. It can even create makeshift shoes by wrapping it around your feet when your regular footwear fails. But the real power of duct tape is in combining it with other items to create complete systems. Duct tape plus plastic bags equals completely waterproof storage that can protect critical supplies from flooding or moisture. Duct tape plus aluminum foil equals reflective insulation that can help retain body heat in cold conditions. Duct tape plus fabric equals reinforced materials that can withstand much more stress and wear. Professional survival instructors often carry duct tape wrapped around pencils, hiking poles, or water bottles to save space and weight. A single roll can repair everything from torn clothing to broken tools to damaged shelters, but carrying a full roll can be bulky and heavy. Pre-wrapping it around other items gives you access to substantial amounts of tape while saving space. Here's a repair technique that could save your life. Duct tape can create temporary but effective seals on punctured water containers, damaged pipes, and even small holes in boat hulls. When your primary water storage is compromised and you can't replace it, duct tape repairs can keep you from dying of thirst. But there are advanced applications most people never think of. Duct tape can create makeshift hinges for improvised doors and containers. It can bundle items together for easier transport. It can mark trails and locations when you need to navigate in unfamiliar areas. It can even create emergency restraints for security purposes when dealing with dangerous people. The adhesive on duct tape is designed to remain effective in extreme temperatures and conditions. Unlike regular tape that fails when it gets cold or hot, duct tape maintains its sticking power in conditions that would cause other adhesives to fail completely. Here's something critical. Buy name brand duct tape, not the cheap imitations. Real duct tape uses a cloth backing that won't tear easily and an adhesive that bonds permanently to most surfaces. The cheap stuff looks similar, but fails when you need it most. Spend the extra money for quality tape that will perform when your life depends on it.
Item number 7. Bleach, your chemical safety net. A gallon jug of unscented liquid bleach might be the most important survival item you're not thinking about, and this has nothing to do with keeping your clothes white. This is about staying alive when the water treatment plants shut down and the pharmacies close forever. Bleach kills bacteria, viruses, and parasites that cause deadly waterborne diseases. When your regular water source becomes contaminated and you have no other purification options, bleach makes it safe to drink. The EPA officially recommends 8 drops of unscented liquid bleach per gallon of clear water or 16 drops per gallon of cloudy water for emergency disinfection. But water purification is just the beginning of bleach's survival applications. It sanitizes surfaces, preventing the spread of disease when basic hygiene becomes impossible. It sterilizes medical equipment when proper sterilization tools aren't available. It can even be used to treat minor wounds in extreme situations, though this should only be done when proper medical care isn't available. Here's what most people don't understand about bleach. It has a shelf life, but when stored properly, it remains effective for years. Keep it in a cool, dark place in its original container, and it slowly loses potency but remains usable for emergency disinfection long past its expiration date. Even weak bleach is better than no disinfection when you're dealing with contaminated water or unsanitary conditions. Different concentrations of bleach have different applications. Standard household bleach is usually 5.25% sodium hypochlorite, which is perfect for water disinfection and surface sanitation. Pool shock is a much stronger concentration that can be mixed to create large quantities of disinfectant solution, but it requires careful handling and measuring. Let me share a technique that could save your family's life. Bleach can disinfect large quantities of water for storage. If you need to fill containers with water from questionable sources, proper bleach treatment can make it safe for long-term storage. This is how you build up water reserves when you can't trust what's coming out of the taps. But there's an advanced application that most people never consider. Bleach can be used to disinfect food preparation surfaces when you're processing wild game, foraged foods, or any food source that might carry bacteria or parasites. When you can't afford to get food poisoning because medical care isn't available, proper disinfection becomes a survival necessity. Here's something critical. Buy unscented, basic bleach without additives. The fancy bleaches with colors, fragrances, or cleaning boosters contain chemicals that can be harmful when used for water purification. You want pure sodium hypochlorite and water, nothing else.
Item number 8. Salt, the eternal preservative. Salt doesn't expire, ever. And that single fact makes it one of the most valuable survival commodities you can stockpile, because it addresses multiple critical survival needs that become impossible to meet through other means when supply chains collapse. Most people think of salt as something you sprinkle on food for flavor, but throughout human history, salt has been so valuable that people fought wars over it. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt. That's where we get the word salary. There's a reason entire civilizations were built around salt production and trade. It solves fundamental survival problems that have no other solutions. Salt preserves food by drawing out moisture and creating an environment where harmful bacteria cannot survive. This is how humans preserved meat, fish, and vegetables for thousands of years before refrigeration existed. When the power goes out permanently and your freezer becomes a useless box, salt curing becomes the only way to make protein last more than a few days. Here's how salt preservation actually works, because understanding the science helps you use it effectively. Salt draws water out of food through osmosis, but it also draws water out of bacteria and other microorganisms, killing them. The concentration of salt required to preserve food is too high for most harmful organisms to survive, but the preserved food remains safe and nutritious for humans to eat. But salt has medical applications that could save your life when hospitals are overwhelmed and pharmacies are empty. Salt water can clean wounds and prevent infections. It's not as effective as modern antiseptics, but it's infinitely better than nothing. It can serve as a mouthwash when dental care isn't available, preventing tooth infections that can become life-threatening without proper treatment. Salt water can also help prevent dehydration by replacing electrolytes lost through sweating, vomiting, or diarrhea. When you're working hard in hot conditions or dealing with illness, plain water isn't enough. Your body needs salt to retain fluids and maintain proper cellular function. Here's an advanced preservation technique. You can create salt-cured vegetables that last for months without refrigeration. Sauerkraut, kimchi, and other fermented vegetables use salt to create controlled fermentation that preserves the vegetables while actually increasing their nutritional value. These foods provide vitamin C and other nutrients that prevent deficiency diseases when fresh produce isn't available. Different types of salt have different applications.
Table salt is fine for basic preservation and medical uses. Sea salt contains trace minerals that can be important for long-term health when your diet becomes limited. Canning salt is pure sodium chloride without additives, making it ideal for food preservation. Rock salt is cheaper in large quantities and perfect for bulk preservation projects. The key is buying salt in substantial quantities while it's cheap and readily available. A 50-pound bag of salt costs less than a tank of gas, but could keep your family fed for months in a crisis situation. Stored in waterproof containers to prevent moisture absorption, which can cause clumping but doesn't reduce effectiveness. Item number 9. Rubbing alcohol and high-proof drinking alcohol. Both types of alcohol become survival essentials in collapse scenarios, but for different reasons that most people don't fully understand. Having both types gives you medical, practical, and psychological tools that can be critical for long-term survival. Rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, is medical-grade antiseptic that kills bacteria, viruses, and fungi on contact. When proper medical supplies aren't available, rubbing alcohol can disinfect wounds, sterilize tools and equipment, and sanitize surfaces. It's more effective than many other disinfectants and works quickly without requiring dilution or special preparation. But rubbing alcohol has practical applications beyond medical use. It's an excellent cleaner for electronics and precision instruments because it evaporates quickly without leaving residue. It can remove adhesive residues, clean glass and mirrors, and degrease mechanical parts. When proper cleaning supplies become unavailable, rubbing alcohol can maintain critical equipment. Here's something most people don't know. Rubbing alcohol is an outstanding fire starter, even in wet conditions. A cloth soaked in rubbing alcohol will ignite immediately and burn hot enough to start fires even when other materials are damp. Unlike gasoline or other petroleum-based fire starters, alcohol burns cleanly without producing toxic fumes in enclosed spaces. High-proof drinking alcohol, especially grain alcohol, vodka, or other spirits above 40% alcohol content, serves different but equally important purposes. It's also antiseptic and can be used for wound cleaning and equipment sterilization, though it's not as effective as rubbing alcohol for these purposes. But drinking alcohol has unique advantages in survival situations. Small amounts can help prevent hypothermia by dilating blood vessels and improving circulation, though you should never rely on alcohol as your primary cold weather strategy. It can also help with pain management when proper medical care isn't available, though again, this should only be used in truly desperate situations. More importantly, alcohol can be used to create tinctures and extract medicinal compounds from plants. Many traditional herbal medicines use alcohol as a solvent to concentrate active ingredients from medicinal plants. When pharmaceuticals aren't available, traditional plant medicines extracted in alcohol can treat various conditions. High-proof alcohol is also excellent for preserving biological specimens and creating antiseptic solutions. You can dilute it to create hand sanitizer when commercial products aren't available. You can use it to preserve foods by creating alcohol-based extracts and preserves. And let's be honest about psychological factors. In high-stress survival situations, small amounts of alcohol can help calm nerves and improve morale. When people are dealing with extreme stress, fear, and uncertainty, alcohol can provide temporary psychological relief that helps maintain group cohesion and individual mental health. Both types of alcohol have excellent storage characteristics. They don't spoil or expire when stored properly. They're lightweight and compact. They can be traded or bartered because they have both practical and recreational value that people understand and want. The key is storing these in appropriate quantities and concentrations. For medical use, you want 70% isopropyl alcohol, which is more effective than higher concentrations for disinfection. For drinking alcohol, higher proof is better because it's more versatile and can be diluted if necessary. Item number 10. Coffee filters. Precision filtration technology. You probably think coffee filters are just for making coffee, but these simple paper discs are actually precision filtration devices engineered to separate particles from liquids with remarkable efficiency. In survival situations, this makes them invaluable tools that can solve problems you never imagined.
Coffee filters are designed to let water pass through while stopping particles as small as 20 microns. To put that in perspective, that's smaller than most bacteria and fine enough to remove sediment, debris, and many contaminants from questionable water sources. They won't purify water to drinking standards by themselves, but they create excellent pre-filters for more advanced purification systems. Here's how to use them for water filtration. Layer multiple coffee filters in a funnel or improvised filtering device. Pour muddy or debris-filled water through slowly, and you'll get much clearer water on the other side. This removes the visible contaminants that can clog more sophisticated filters and makes chemical or boiling purification much more effective. But water filtration is just the beginning of their survival applications. Coffee filters are perfect for straining impurities from homemade medicines and tinctures when you're creating plant-based remedies. They can separate solids from liquids in food preparation, helping you extract oils, broths, and other nutrients from limited ingredients. They're also excellent for organizing and storing small items like seeds, pills, screws, nails, and other hardware. Unlike plastic bags, coffee filters allow air circulation, which prevents moisture buildup and mold growth. You can write on them with pencil or pen to label contents, and they're cheap enough to use liberally for organization. Here's a survival application most people never consider. Coffee filters make outstanding fire-starting material. They catch sparks easily from flint and steel, burn steadily without producing toxic fumes, and can help you get fires going even in damp conditions. The paper is thin enough to ignite quickly, but substantial enough to sustain a flame long enough to catch kindling. They can also serve as improvised bandages for minor cuts and scrapes. While they're not sterile, they're clean and absorbent, and they won't stick to wounds the way regular paper would. In emergency medical situations, when proper bandages aren't available, coffee filters can provide basic wound protection. Advanced applications include using them as dust masks in emergency situations. While they won't stop viruses or fine particles, they can prevent inhalation of larger debris during cleanup operations or when traveling through dusty, damaged areas. They're also perfect for protecting sensitive equipment from dust and debris during storage. The key advantage of coffee filters is that they're incredibly lightweight and compact. You can store hundreds of them in a small space, making them perfect for bug-out bags or emergency kits where weight and space are critical considerations. They have an indefinite shelf life when stored properly, and they're so inexpensive that you can afford to use them liberally without worrying about waste. Item number 11. Basic bar soap, the ultimate lifesaver. The final item might be the most important of all. Basic, unscented bar soap. Not liquid soap with fancy ingredients, not antibacterial soap with special additives. Just plain, simple bar soap that costs less than $1 and could literally save your life. When modern medical care isn't available, soap becomes your primary defense against the diseases that kill people in collapse scenarios. It's not exotic infections or dramatic injuries that cause most deaths when civilizations break down. It's basic hygiene-related diseases that we've almost forgotten about in the modern world. Dysentery, typhoid, cholera, skin infections, all preventable with proper hygiene, but deadly when soap isn't available. Here's what most people don't understand about soap. It doesn't just clean dirt off your skin. Soap molecules actually destroy the cell walls of bacteria and viruses, killing them on contact. This is why proper hand washing with soap is more effective than hand sanitizer for most pathogens. When you can't get to a hospital and antibiotics aren't available, preventing infection becomes infinitely more important than treating it. During cholera outbreaks throughout history, communities with access to soap had dramatically lower mortality rates than communities without it. This isn't coincidence. It's the direct result of soap's ability to kill the bacteria that cause deadly waterborne diseases. In survival situations where you might be drinking questionable water or eating food of uncertain safety, washing your hands with soap before eating becomes a life or death habit. But soap has applications beyond personal hygiene that make it invaluable in survival scenarios. It can clean wounds and prevent infections when proper antiseptics aren't available. While it's not as effective as modern medical disinfectants, soap is infinitely better than nothing when treating injuries that could become life-threatening if infected. Soap can also be used to clean cooking utensils and food preparation surfaces, preventing cross-contamination and food poisoning when you can't afford to get sick. When you're already stressed, malnourished, and living in difficult conditions, food poisoning can be fatal rather than just unpleasant. Here's an advanced technique that could save your life. Soap can detect certain chemical contaminations. If soap won't lather in water, it often indicates the presence of heavy metals or other contaminants that make the water unsafe to drink. It's not a perfect test, but it can provide early warning about water quality when more sophisticated testing isn't available. Different types of bar soap have different survival applications, and understanding these differences can be crucial. Plain, unscented soap lasts longest and is least likely to cause skin irritation during extended use. Glycerin soaps are gentler on skin but don't last as long. Castile soap is made from natural ingredients and can even be used for washing clothes and dishes when dedicated cleaners aren't available. But here's something that demonstrates soap's survival value. During economic collapses throughout history, soap has consistently become barter currency. In Venezuela's ongoing crisis, bars of soap are traded for food and medicine. During the siege of Sarajevo, people would walk for miles to trade valuable items for soap because staying clean meant staying alive. The reason soap works so well as barter currency is that everyone understands its value. It has indefinite shelf life when stored properly, it's compact and lightweight, and it addresses fundamental human needs that become critical in survival situations. Unlike luxury items that people can live without, soap solves problems that can kill you if they're not addressed.
Storage is simple, but important. Keep bar soap in dry conditions to prevent it from dissolving or becoming mushy. Wrap individual bars in paper or cloth to prevent them from sticking together. Stored properly, bar soap can last for years without losing effectiveness. The key is stockpiling substantial quantities while soap is cheap and readily available. A case of bar soap costs less than most people spend on coffee in a week, but it could keep your family healthy for months in a crisis situation. When pharmacies are closed and hospitals are overwhelmed, soap becomes your primary defense against the diseases that kill people in unsanitary conditions. Here's what connects all 11 of these items, and this is the part that should fundamentally change how you think about preparedness. They're simple, they're cheap, they're available right now, and they solve real problems when complex systems fail. While other people are spending thousands of dollars on generators that require fuel and maintenance, solar panels they don't know how to install, and freeze-dried food that costs more per meal than a restaurant dinner, you can be comprehensively prepared for under $100 by simply recognizing the hidden value in everyday items. But this isn't about being cheap or taking shortcuts. This is about understanding what actually works when everything else fails. The families who survive extended collapse scenarios, and I've studied dozens of them from different countries and different types of crises, they're not the ones with the most money or the fanciest equipment. They're the ones who understand that survival comes down to meeting basic human needs: clean water, food preservation, fire, shelter, sanitation, medical care, and organization. These 11 items address every single one of those needs, using technology that's been tested not for years, but for centuries. Glass containers have been preserving food for over 200 years. Cotton fabric has been treating wounds for thousands of years. Salt has been preserving meat since ancient civilizations. These aren't experimental techniques. They're proven solutions that work reliably, consistently, and indefinitely. The reason these items work is precisely because they're not complicated. There are no batteries to die, no software to crash, no supply chains to break, no specialized knowledge required to use them effectively. They just work, day after day, year after year, crisis after crisis. And here's the part that should terrify you about timing. These items are cheap and available now, but they won't be when everyone else figures out their value. When the crisis starts, whether it's economic collapse, infrastructure failure, supply chain breakdown, or something we haven't even imagined, the first things that disappear from stores are the obvious survival items: generators, batteries, canned food, bottled water. But the second wave of shortages hits the basic household items when people start getting desperate and creative. Glass jars, duct tape, soap, salt, all the unglamorous stuff that actually keeps people alive. By then, prices skyrocket and availability plummets. The time to collect these items is now, while they're invisible to most people and priced as commodity goods. Let me paint you a scenario that illustrates why this matters. The power grid goes down, maybe from a cyber attack, maybe from a solar flare, maybe from infrastructure failure. Doesn't matter why. Your refrigerator stops working, your freezer thaws out, and you have 24 to 48 hours before all your frozen and refrigerated food becomes inedible. Your neighbors are panicking, trying to cook everything on gas grills before it spoils, fighting over the last bags of ice at gas stations that still have power. But you calmly start preserving food using salt curing techniques. You portion out portions into glass jars for controlled spoilage. You use aluminum foil to create solar cooking systems that work without electricity or complex equipment. You organize everything with plastic bags and duct tape so nothing gets lost or contaminated. After a week, your neighbors are eating cold canned beans from damaged cans they found in a looted grocery store. You're eating preserved vegetables, salt-cured meats, and foods you've kept fresh using techniques that don't require any external power or complex equipment. That's not fantasy. That's the difference between understanding what actually works and hoping that someone else will solve your problems for you. Now, these 11 items will give you a solid foundation for surviving the initial chaos when systems fail. But they're just the beginning of what you need to know if you really want to be prepared for what's coming. And all the signs indicate we're running out of time to prepare leisurely. You need to understand how these basic items fit into a complete survival system. That guide I mentioned earlier, Dark Reset, Survival Before the Silence by Daniel Cross. It takes everything I've shown you here and builds it into a comprehensive survival protocol that's been tested in real-world collapse situations. Cross doesn't just tell you to stockpile these items, he shows you exactly how to use them in combination with other techniques to create food storage systems that can preserve fresh food for months without refrigeration, water purification setups that can make any water source safe to drink, home security measures that protect your family without relying on law enforcement, and medical protocols that can treat serious conditions when hospitals aren't available. What makes Cross's guide different is that he learned these techniques from people who actually survived societal collapses. Not from books or YouTube videos, but from families in Venezuela who made it through economic warfare, communities in Eastern Europe that survived the fall of the Soviet Union, and indigenous groups that maintain traditional survival skills that modern people have forgotten. He spent years living completely off-grid, testing every technique personally before including it in the guide. These aren't theoretical approaches. They're field-tested methods that have kept people alive when governments fell and infrastructure disappeared. The complete system is available for just $37 right now, which is honestly less than most families spend on a single meal at a restaurant. But the knowledge inside could be worth more than all the expensive survival gear money can buy when you're facing a real crisis situation.
Cross includes detailed instructions for everything from building hidden storage systems inside your home that are invisible to looters, to creating communication networks that work when internet and phone systems are down, to training your family mentally and emotionally to stay calm and make good decisions when others are panicking. He also provides specific guidance for different living situations, whether you're in a big city, suburban neighborhood, or rural area, because survival strategies that work in one environment might be completely wrong for another. If you're serious about protecting your family from what's coming, I honestly think this guide could be the difference between surviving comfortably and becoming another casualty. The link is in the description, but let me finish showing you why acting on this information matters more than just having it. But whether you get Cross's guide or not, you need to start collecting these 11 items immediately. Don't wait for permission from experts. Don't wait for confirmation from the news. And definitely don't wait for prices to go up and availability to disappear. By the time collapse becomes obvious to everyone, it's too late to prepare effectively. The smart money isn't betting on if these complex systems will fail, they're betting on when. And when that day comes, you'll either be ready with simple, reliable solutions, or you'll be standing in line with everyone else hoping someone will save you. Your neighbors might think you're paranoid for saving glass jars and stockpiling salt. Let them think that. While they're standing in empty stores wondering why the shelves are bare, you'll be taking care of your family using items that cost less than their daily coffee habit but provide more security than anything they can buy when the crisis starts. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most people refuse to face. The government cannot save everyone. The military cannot protect everyone. Local law enforcement cannot help everyone. When systems fail on a large scale, you are responsible for your own family's survival. And the decisions you make today determine whether you're prepared or helpless when that moment comes. Most people won't prepare until it's too late, because preparation requires accepting that bad things can happen to good people, that our comfortable modern life isn't guaranteed to continue, that we might need to take care of ourselves when the institutions we depend on are overwhelmed or non-functional. But you're different. You clicked on this video because something inside you recognizes that change is coming, that the stability we've enjoyed for decades might not last forever, that preparing for disruption is not paranoia, but wisdom. Trust that instinct. Start with these 11 items today. Don't overthink it. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Don't delay because you want to research more options. Get glass jars from your recycling. Buy duct tape and aluminum foil on your next grocery run. Pick up extra soap and salt. Start a box of cotton rags and plastic bags. Learn how to use these items before you need them. Practice preserving food with salt. Test water filtration systems with coffee filters. Try starting fires with alcohol and cotton fabric. Make sure you understand how these techniques work when you have time to experiment and make mistakes, not when your life depends on getting it right the first time. And most importantly, teach these skills to your family. Knowledge that only exists in your head dies with you, but knowledge that's shared survives and multiplies. Make sure everyone in your household understands these basics, because when crisis hits, you might not be home to handle everything yourself. The people who make it through what's coming won't be the ones with the most expensive equipment or the biggest stockpiles. They'll be the ones with the most practical knowledge and the wisdom to use simple solutions for complex problems. If this video has changed how you look at the ordinary items in your house, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which item surprised you the most. Are you already stockpiling any of these household treasures, or is there an obvious survival item I missed that you think deserves to be on this list? I want to hear about your experiences too. Have you noticed any of these items becoming harder to find or more expensive in your area? Have you tried any of these techniques? Are there other simple household items that you've discovered have hidden survival value? And if you found this content valuable, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I've got more videos coming that build on these concepts. I'm working on content about urban foraging techniques that can supplement your food supply using plants that grow in cities, DIY water purification systems you can build with materials from hardware stores, and how to create communication networks that work when internet and phone systems are down. I'm also planning a series on bartering and trade skills for post-collapse scenarios, because knowing what people will want and need gives you tremendous advantage in rebuilding communities and economies when the old systems don't work anymore. The people who thrive in uncertain times aren't the ones who just stockpile supplies. They're the ones who understand systems, who can solve problems creatively, who can help others while protecting their own families. That combination of knowledge, skills, and community connections is what creates real security when external systems fail. Remember, the best time to prepare was yesterday, but the second best time is right now. Don't wait for permission, don't wait for perfect information, and definitely don't wait for crisis to force your hand. The families who survive and thrive through chaos are the ones who prepared when times were good and resources were available. Start collecting these items today. Learn how to use them. Share this knowledge with people you care about.
And when the lights go out for the last time, you'll be ready not just to survive, but to rebuild something better. Stay sharp, stay prepared, and I'll see you in the next video. The future belongs to the people who are ready for it.